Dann gehe ich direkt von Frau Göbel zu William Anderson, der ein Beispiel präsentieren wird für einen sehr sorgfältig und differenziert aufgesetzten unternehmensinternen Beschwerdemechanismus, der eigentlich in sich nochmal aus verschiedenen Säulen besteht. William Anderson wird gleich auf Englisch sprechen und einige Elemente seiner Vorstellung werde ich auch in den englischen Terminologien lassen, weil es sonst sehr sperrig klingt in der Übersetzung. William Anderson ist Vice President, Vizepräsident und Global Head of Social and Environmental Affairs Program, also das soziale und Umweltprogramm des Unternehmens Adidas. Er führt ein Team von 50 Personen, die aus Arbeitsrechtlern, Arbeitsschutzexperten und Umweltschutzexperten bestehen, die in 20 Ländern rund um den Globus arbeiten. Von seinem Hintergrund her ist William Anderson Jurist mit einem menschenrechtlichen Schwerpunkt, 35 Jahren Erfahrung, sich mit sozialen und Umweltschutzaspekten zu beschäftigen. In dieser Funktion hat er als Berater nicht nur für Unternehmen, sondern auch für Regierungen und internationale Finanzinstitutionen wie die Weltbank gearbeitet und ist besonders engagiert im Bereich Corporate Social Responsibility, Nachhaltigkeitsinitiativen und sozialer und umweltorientierter Compliance. Er ist Mitglied des OECD-Beraterpanels für Due Diligence und verantwortungsvolles Lieferkettenmanagement, also im Herzen hier auch unseres Themas, seit langem aktiv. Und er ist Mitglied des unabhängigen Menschenrechtsberatungsgremiums der FIFA unter anderem. William Anderson, ich übergebe an Sie und in den englischen Sprachraum.
Thank you so much. Very, very kind of you to invite me to speak, and I'm happy to share some of our experiences, and hopefully that informs the dialogue and the discussions that you're having. If I may, I'll just try and get onto the shared screen. Hopefully you can see my screen. Yes, I'd like to just walk you through the program that we have and explain to you some of the grievance mechanisms that we operate first within the pillar in supply chain, but to also share and explain that we also have programs in terms of complaint mechanisms that relate to our own operations, which would be in the German context covered by our Works Council.
Bill, I'm sorry. Entschuldigung, Bill, wir sehen den Bildschirm nicht. Wir würden gerne die Präsentation einblenden lassen. Deswegen stoppe ich Sie mal kurz, damit wir alles auch hier.
Yes, I tried to. Sorry. Just for this, again to share the screen.
So viel Zeit muss sein. Eine Online-Konferenz ohne Pannen wäre mir sehr unheimlich.
Yes.
Jetzt ist alles da. Vielen Dank.
Sharing.
Yeah.
You can see? Is it working? Apologies for that. Hopefully that's visible now. Yes? All right, thank you so much. So let me just repeat myself very briefly. We're going to look at the supply chain element, which is the human rights and worker empowerment area that we have. But the company, of course, covers other topics related to the human rights risks that we deal with as a business. So we also, of course, deal with our own employment practices within Adidas as a company, but also our engagement with the sports world, which was referred to my involvement with the FIFA Human Rights Advisory Board. So, but the core of what I wanted to share with you and discuss is worker rights and worker rights complaints mechanisms. And obviously we have a large supply chain, over 700,000 people work in our supply chain. And a critical element of that work is to act and intercept and address and remedy issues early on to reduce the potential for large-scale crisis. So, of course, as you see from this illustration, when you reach a point of where there is a strike, a stoppage, or a conflict, then your systems of grievance management are not being successful. So this is one of the critical functions that we see for grievance mechanisms, is early resolution, as the earlier speaker also shared. So it's early resolution of issues is critical to the process that we follow. And so the other thing to explain is very clearly our system, this is Adidas-led system, factory grievances, so in 0.1, that first column, a lot of our factory-based grievance systems is linked into a layered management process. So we start off with our on-site factory grievance. We also have independent hotlines. And then we have at the apex, at the top of that process, a third-party complaint system. So as cases get escalated, and particularly if they're brought forward by trade unions or others, then we may reach the third-party complaint mechanism. But we also operate in an ecosystem. That ecosystem, that environment that we operate, includes other non-judicial systems. So we're a member of an organization called the Fair Labor Association. It's something similar to the Ethical Trade Initiative in Europe. And they also operate a third-party mechanism. And when we receive complaints in our third-party complaint mechanism, if the party wants to have an independent assessment, we can direct them to the FLA system, which is a wholly independent. It's independent of Adidas. It's separate from us. Often also where we have appeal processes, at the end of the appeal process, we encourage any party that's not satisfied with the system to look to the OECD complaint mechanism. And of course, we're also then in individual jurisdictions linked into, in the third column, the judicial column, we're engaged around other mechanisms, which of course are the legal mechanisms that are available. So just turning now to the factory operational grievance channel, and there essentially it covers our core supply chain. We have a grouping, 80% of our product is made by approximately 110 suppliers. Those 110 suppliers employ approximately 500,000 workers. And we have sought to embed a mechanism within each of our factories, which we can look into and track the remedies and the resolution of issues that they manage. And we are then able to intercede or interject in that process where we see a pattern or any serious cases that we believe we should have an involvement with. This system is internal. It's a dashboard, and it's a system between Adidas and our suppliers. It's not publicly reported. There's no published reports that come from this. It's an internal mechanism to support rapid remedy of issues. So we've had a very progressive development of this program. We launched it in 2016. It now covers 90% of workers in our mainstream supply chain work. So 90% of that workforce is covered. The total number currently covered in the program is 570,000 people. And we have rolled this out progressively in partnership with a provider, because this is a platform which relies on smartphone usage and a kind of web technology. So we're tracking issues and complaints through that mechanism. And through this, we of course deal with and have access to and can see tens of thousands of complaints collectively that have happened over the past years since we've introduced this system. As you'll see, reflecting our supply chain, there's larger numbers of factories in places like China and Indonesia and Vietnam, and that's where we have the highest concentration of our effort. So it's a very comprehensive program. It relies on digital technology. It is anonymous for the workers, and it is linked into other mechanisms where we check and look to safeguard those complaints in terms of the remedies. So let me then just turn to the Apex system. This is the system at the top where we have complaints generated, third-party complaints we call them. So largely the numbers of cases that we deal with through the third-party mechanism tends to be through organized labor. So it tends to be trade unions, or it could be non-government organizations representing the interests of workers that may not be unionized. And so we have, every year we may have 10 or more complaints that we work with within our third-party complaint system. This system actually is a human rights complaint system, so actually any human right of any nature can be brought to us, but the majority of the cases we deal with relate largely to freedom of association or trade union rights. And then core to this process is that we are looking to address remedies. So largely these are conciliatory processes that we follow. And then we actually publish a summary of all of our cases on our website. So you can find a detailed analysis of the nature of the complaints in each year. And if I may just turn to the actual numbers of cases that we've had and the pattern of these cases, as you'll see that the numbers are relatively small. I mean, they could be 10 up to 20 in a year. But, and we've had very great success in the early days of our program with up to 80% successful closure of cases. But as the program has matured, we've actually had larger number of cases that we're dealing with, and we're having a rollover between periods of time. We try very hard to complete tasks or to address issues within a few months. But where we find that we can't remedy those things within a few months, we often will be rolling into the next year. We have very few unresolved cases where we can't seek a resolution between the parties, but we do have a number, as you'll see, the orange line is the rollover, an increased number of cases roll over into the following year. As they can't be resolved within a few months, they tend to be spread longer than that. So our system, again, this is at the apex, so those cases that are most complex, often to do with freedom of association, often to do with reinstatement of workers or impacts on the formation of unions. This is the area which we have a lot of intensive activity. I will stop there just to summarize the cases that we've done. I'll take questions later, I'm sure. Thank you so much.
Vielen Dank, Bill, für die Präsentation. Wir haben kurz gesehen, dass im Chat Fragen landen, sind aber darauf angewiesen, dass die uns hier im Studio eingespielt werden. Bis das geschieht und uns die Fragen hier auf dem Screen erscheinen, eine Frage an Sie noch von mir, eine doppelte Frage. Woran messen Sie den Erfolg eines Beschwerdemechanismus? Und gibt es Learnings über die Zeit Ihrer Praxis, die Sie hier teilen wollen, für andere Unternehmen, die ebenfalls Mechanismen aufbauen wollen und verbessern wollen?
Yes. If we look at the operational grievance mechanism, which is the mechanism for the supply chain, for the actual operational level supply chain, we have a separate tracking system to look at worker satisfaction. So we actually have a high closeout rate of cases, up to 98% closure rate of cases, but the satisfaction level may be lower than that. And so the workers may have a case closed, but they may not be satisfied with the outcome, right? So this is what we are trying to address in our system. This is why we look to have a process of intervention where we can step in more complex cases. I think what we've learned there particularly is regarding sexual harassment. This is a topic in the context of Asia, is a very sensitive subject. Often you don't get complaints coming forward, and we've been trying to build out systems to encourage and allow for cases which we have to examine sexual harassment. The other cases in the third-party system of complaints, the APEX system that we operate, there in that system we seek an actual confirmation of satisfaction by the complainant as part of our closeout system. So we are looking for them to actually formally confirm that they are satisfied with the outcome. And majority of cases, they're fully, they're happy. But sometimes if we are unable to resolve a case, of course, there isn't a sense of satisfaction in that process. And maybe for takeaways and examples, one of the real challenges that we face is that our system is trusted. It is well respected by the trade union movement and others. And we tend to get a large number of requests that may come to us in advance of perhaps a legal case. So rather than go through the court procedures, it will come to us. So that is a challenge that we have in terms of the cases that may require legal decisions actually come to us, where we may not have the ability to make legal decisions to resolve cases. So that's just an example. Thank you so much.
Vielen Dank. Inzwischen treffen hier mehr und mehr Fragen ein. Wir müssen aus Zeitgründen auswählen und vielleicht können Sie ja im Nachgang über den Chat auch noch die eine oder andere Antwort selbst hineinposten über Zoom. Eine Frage hier, wer genau ist verantwortlich dafür, die Mechanismen auf Produktionsstandortebene zu führen, zu etablieren? Ist das Adidas oder ist das das Unternehmen, was den Produktionsstandort führt?
Yes, the local companies pay for and manage the operational system, but we've designed, developed, and partnered with an external provider to create the system. So we have access rights to the system because we are the creator, they are the manager, and then we have this intervention ability because we can access and see all complaints, all 50,000 plus complaints are visible to us in the system.
Vielen Dank. Die Frage zu Tier 1 können Sie vielleicht auf Englisch im Chat beantworten. Eine letzte Frage aus dem Chat, die ich hier herausgreifen möchte, ist, ob Sie noch etwas ausführen können, kurz zu der Workers' Grievance Platform, zu der App, die Sie erwähnt haben. Wie erhalten die Arbeitnehmerinnen und Arbeiter diese App und wie funktioniert das genauer?
Yes, actually, like everything, it actually was a journey that we've traveled. And initially, we started out with external hotlines. Then we introduced SMS messaging from phones. But actually, as more and more workers gained more smartphones, now this is an app within the phone, just as you would experience with your Apple phone or whatever. So they're able to message anonymously into the system directly from their phones. So there's a high level of ownership of phones, particularly in the Asian factories.